dance Andante is perhaps best described as the theatrical dance expression of a chapter in my new book. The chapter is titled 193 Days, and it expresses the 193 days that our war heroine, Mrs Elizabeth Choy, spent imprisoned during the Japanese occupation of Singapore. Andante is also a musical term describing tempo, slow, very slowly, moderately slow. And one of the things Mrs. Choy said to me was, one of the more difficult things it was for her when she was in prison was that time moved so slowly. So Andante is a revisiting of her experience and the physical expression of the chapter in my book. I went in search of Mrs. Elizabeth Choy in 2001, right after September 11. My company was, I think at that point in time, the first Singaporean dance company invited to perform in New York. And as a young choreographer then, it felt like another little dream come true and meant a lot to me that we performed there. We came back to Singapore 3 days before September 11, and September 11 was very devastating for me. It made me re-question my priorities in life and the things I was giving up to push my art. I also felt a huge blow to the woman that I was, and I didn't know how to move forward. So then I thought of people whom I think of as heroes in my life who had experienced worse things than I have, and Mrs. Choy came to mind. I think her story of how she suffered during the war, her humanitarian deeds, and the role she played when Singapore was finding itself again post-British rule. All those things intrigued me, and I wanted to find out how Mrs. Choy found the courage and the humor to move on, because I didn't know how to move on. So I went in search of her and spent the next 2 years, 2001 right up to 2003, in pursuit of Mrs. Choy. What I hadn't expected was that she was still alive, and a mutual friend introduced us, and I wrote her a letter. One day I received a phone call, and she said, "This is Mrs. Choy, you must be Tammy, and why don't you come over and speak to me?" I think the experience was very, very moving, life-affirming, and very touching, because it wasn't a figure that felt so removed or remote, but it was just two women sitting down in a pre-war house on hot afternoons and just talking to each other. An older woman, a wiser, more beautiful woman, talking to a younger person, a younger woman. And the very first afternoon when I met Mrs. Choy, she was sitting outside her house, fanning herself, and I appeared at her gate. And I think she was in 2002 then. I think she was quite taken aback to see me too, because she had expected someone older, and her immediate reaction to me was, "Oh, you're just a young little dancer, you're so young," you know. And I think that my youth then stirred something in her. So what Mrs. Choy shared with me was not what I had read in history books or what we see in the National Archives. Mrs. Choy presented herself as the woman she was in a very intimate, personal, honest manner, and that touched me greatly. I think that there has been many really special, enjoyable moments for me working on Andante. During the second rehearsal, I threw out everything I made in the first rehearsal, where I slaved for 2 hours, jumping around, kicking my legs, and coming up with phrases and phrases and phrases of movement. during the second rehearsal, I literally threw everything away, including my music, which at that point was a special edition, which I paid quite a bit for to have it composed for me. I felt that I was too pinned down by the music. I felt trapped. I just wanted to start over. And that was an interesting place to be, to not be afraid to just look at phrases and say, you know what, this isn't working. Throw it away. And I think I like that I can still laugh at myself. So that's nice to rediscover in the context of making dance, which I've not done in the past year. I have fun working with myself, so I like that, you know, I can laugh at myself and say, okay, this doesn't work, blah, move on. Andante also features my dancing partner, which is the bed. And I think initially when I suggested that I was going to use a prop, the Uber stage manager that we have, Seok, sent me photographs and photographs of every bed you could possibly find in IKEA, and measurements, and you know, she's just so wonderful at her job, and she was so thorough. But when she sent me that email, I think it was done earlier in 2012, and my mind really wasn't on my prop. So I said to her, I had in mind what my bed was going to look like, and not to worry, I'll find it. Then closer to when rehearsals actually began, Seok on her own initiative said to me, Tammy, the bed you're thinking of is no longer brought in by IKEA. So would you like to rethink the way the bed looks? And I said, okay, Seok, don't worry, I'll figure it out. And it really wasn't, I don't get stressed easily by a lot of things. Then I remembered the bed that I wanted and where I had last seen it. And the last time I saw the bed was on stage in a school production of Oliver. And my daughter was Oliver, sitting on this bed, belting out a very moving song. And the bed has this, it's made of wrought iron, it has a very clinical look to it that I feel would work for Andante. So I simply sent an email to my daughter's school and to the drama teacher, whom back in the 90s had worked with me, and asked if we could borrow the bed. So that's another little, not the funniest thing that happened, but just something interesting. And I suppose just sharing this with you is just giving you a little insight as to the number of people that come forward to help put together a piece. You'd think that just because it's a solo, it's all about Tammy, but really this solo is not about Tammy. It is about everyone that has allowed this piece to happen, and it is about a woman, and it is about the courage and the spirit in all of us. I think that's what Andante really is about. And it has been an incredible experience being back in the studio moving. I'm enjoying that a lot. And it's a different time this time because I have never really made solo work specifically for myself. I've obviously crafted many solos in my past, but I always cast it on another dancer because I like working with people. So this is an interesting challenge that the Esplanade has posed to me to work with myself. And I've discovered that I like working with myself. I like the solitude, and I like the discipline that is involved working with just myself.